present nor past well learned. We all out of beings with future tellers. Thinking in the future, living in the future. Living in the future, we are the future. Not the present nor past well learned. We all out of beings with future tellers. Yeah. Only Amen. Hell Amen. We forming a body, the Amen body. Everybody play a part of the body. It's all a body. First the mind, the mental, then the brain. Our future self neurons in the transmission, transforming us into our future teller Voltron.
All right.
Man is still me from carbon, 2,000 degrees. Lead soldier, fire starter, flames on like torch. Bars, men, full, all wide, civilized, prepared for war, peacemaker. Fuck ride down, we ride the fly forever. Future teller, break my dog acapella when the beat drop. Pop off like coke, champagne bottle for New Year's. Cheers, no fear in our hearts. Seen off the spot, jackpot 777, add up. 21 guns, so don't make me shoot. Bitch, you can't, pins the number. Future teller, what? None of your English circular, pins the number. We all future teller. Future teller. Perfect picture.
All right. How's everybody doing out here? This is, I don't know what the number of this High and Mighty Talks installment is, but we back. We live again. Good evening. I'm your host, the intellectual Newton Menkares, and this is High and Mighty Talks with me, Newton Menkares. I almost said Mentellect, but you know, I got Mentellect on the brain. I'm doing the cast tonight at 10:30 as usual. It's gonna be, you know, supercharged, super intelliative. New word from us at you know, the American Republic or the Mentellect. New word, intelliative. Watch that word start to make its way around. People are gonna start using that word. It's a word that came through me to replace the word informative. Well, you have informative, and then you got certain information that's out there that and you get informed by it, and that thus makes it informative. Intellitive is higher intel, higher thought, higher levels of or streaming intelligence that comes to those who are high thinkers or able to receive it. So those would be considered intellitive people. Okay, intellitive people share intellitive knowledge, which is what I've come to do for my people, because, you know, information is just something that's just out in the world, and I'm sharing intel that is not in this present day world, future knowledge that we are evolving into. But before I start off and go into that and the topics I'm going to be speaking on, I want to start off in the name of Amen, the Supreme, the All-Powerful, the one and only true Lord. In Amen we trust, in Amen we think, and in Amen we continue forward forever. So now, I'm going to touch on a few topics. All right. I want to get a few casts in here, you know, before this so-called new year comes in, because we're going to be kicking it into overdrive with topics and things like that. You know, I have to be somewhat careful about the things I say on YouTube, you know, because truth speech, aka in the third dimensional realm, is hate speech. Truth speech is hate speech. You know, so-called constitutional rights of free speech, it is being eroded. It is being eroded because anytime you tell people that they can't say a certain thing because it might offend certain people, that's when you're on your way to eroding or getting rid of people's free speech. Because if you could tell people what to say on these social media platforms, then eventually they're going to be telling you what you have to say. You follow? When people start telling you what you can't say, what follows next is they're going to tell you what you have to say in order to maintain an account on these social media platforms. So be mindful that the eroding of your constitutional rights of free speech is being, you know, it's in place. They are wiping away your so-called freedom of speech. You know, if you offend people, the whole Kanye, Kyrie thing is a perfect example of that, because you always know whenever, you know, the beast plans on doing stuff that, you know, or plans on pushing things onto the world, they usually use so-called black people as the litmus test, and they try out basically depriving black people of rights and things like that. And they start off with black people, then it will go to everybody else eventually. You see, black people will always see, I don't know what it is where people think, oh, you know, this whatever bad behavior is going to be reserved for black people in the society. No. Any bad behavior in any society toward any group, or toward one group of people or any group of people, will eventually trickle down to other groups of people, because everything starts with something and continues and picks up and steamrolls. So all you people that's over here who in this country who are claiming yourselves to be white, you know, whether you Caucasian, Asian, East Indian, because that whole white terminology is really applied to immigrants. Those of you who think that you have the immigrant or status of whiteness to offset the people who are the real indigenous people who are falsely being called black, you got another thing coming if you think you have a greater stance over them, because how they do so-called black people, like that term black, it kind of reminds you of the term the untouchables, the ones who are in India. Those are your so-called black people in India. I think they're called the untouchables. They're dark-skinned people with, I think some of them got woolly hair, right? And amongst the rest of the Hindu society, aka so-called East Indians, these people are called, I think, the untouchables or whatnot. And it's the same way so-called black people are made reference to in America as black people. It's like that's the black people, the untouchable people, the hidden people. All kind of things come from that terminology of black. We're going to jump into this. First, I'm going to start off with this culture vulturing of our Mesoamerican heritage. That brings me to this. I've been seeing a lot of these Latinos, right, who are now all of a sudden, they're all concerned about their so-called Mesoamerican heritage being vultured by so-called black people who they call Africans, right? They're concerned that that we are so-called black people are vulturing off of Mesoamerican and Native American culture, or shall I say American Indian culture, because I'm going to explain the difference between Native Americans and American Indians in a minute. But anyway, they're saying you got a lot of these Latinos and these so-called Mongoloid Indians claiming that black people are African, we're African, and Mesoamerican heritage and culture, right? Meaning the first civilizations, the first people who set up civilizations in America are actually them, so-called Native Americans, right? And that we are culture vulturing off of the reason. I saw this because somebody put an Olmec face up on the Juneteenth mural. That's how I came across it. Somebody put an Olmec face up on the Juneteenth mural. Right now, if those of you are familiar with Juneteenth, that's supposed to be something that happened in Texas where they say they freed the slaves around 1865, 64, something like that. And, they was having a Juneteenth celebration after they were basically freed by Lincoln. So, in remembrance of that, you had just recently, maybe a year or so ago, people was doing a whole Juneteenth thing, and they did all these murals on the walls, and somebody put an Olmec face on there, and your so-called Native Americans / Latinos got offended by it. The Mexicans in Mexico today, they got offended by the fact that we so-called black people tried to took the Olmec face and put it on the wall on a mural without in our culture. And I was perplexed by that. Why? Because they sit up here. These are the people in Mexico today. I'm talking the straight-haired Mexicans with the brown skin. The straight-haired Mexicans with the brown skin. They said that the Olmecs are Mexican, or they're Native American or Mexican or Mesoamerican, right? And that's not us. We African. We came from Africa. You people really need to learn your history, or learn, really look at what you're saying. Because I'm going to walk you through this. First and foremost, when somebody, it was on also in the video, I said, I asked the person in the question comment section, I said, what race is a Native American? I asked that question. When we start talking this culture vulturing thing, they claiming that we trying to steal their Mesoamerican heritage and that the Olmecs are Mexican. I said, okay, if they're Olmecs are Mexican like y'all, and they're Mesoamerican like y'all, and they're not so-called black like us, what race is the Native Americans that y'all saying y'all are? What race is the Mesoamericans? I asked them. You know what they said? And they said what I've been saying all along. The guy in the comment section said, well, the Mesoamericans / natives are Asian. He said it. You know, that Asian heritage, that Asian ancestry that you so-called Native Americans like to hide, that you say don't exist. You act like y'all dropped out of the damn planet onto America, and this is when y'all start building civilizations. It's one of your own kind. Many of your own kind. And even Caucasian historians and scientists and people who do the archaeology know that the people who call themselves Native Americans and Latinos with the straight hair, the brown skinned people, the straight hair, that is a mixed race people. The people who are descendants of those are people who crossed the Bering Straits from Mongolia into America. So when the guy said that Native Americans or so-called the Native American the race of the Native American is Asian, that's what he's referring to. So then I said to him, okay, then you're not Native American, or you're not Indigenous American or ethnic American. or original American. You're not. Because if you just said you came from someplace else and you said that's you're Asian and you are part of that migration from Mongolia into America, crossing the Bering Straits, then you Asian. You not American. Does that not make sense? Is that not right? Your origin is Asia. Your origin is Mongolia. Why don't y'all talk about your Mongolian heritage and your Asian heritage? Why don't you talk about that? Why don't you just say that? How are you going to claim that you are native to America and you just told me that y'all came from someplace else? So that would mean that you're not native to, or you're not indigenous to the land. Now you know why. Now let me just go jump ahead for a second. Now, Mexicans and Latinos and all of these people, right? Latinos are a mixture, and Mexicans are a mixture of three races. You have the Caucasians in there from the Spaniards, the conquistadors, the people that came over into Spain, from Spain into Mexico and all the other places. They came, that's why they speak Spanish over there. The Caucasian Spanish came over there. And when they came over there were the indigenous people, the people who were the descendants of the Olmecs, which are your quote-unquote so-called black people today, because you do know that Mexico was originally all black people here. And they didn't come through no African slave trade. There was originally all black people in Mexico. And then once the Caucasians started coming, and these people are part of the Mesoamerican, under the Mesoamerican heritage. The Olmecs, the Aztec, the Inca, the Mayan, all in those areas, Central, South America, Yucatan, all these other places. So you had in that area the original so-called black people in those areas, as the Olmecs, Aztec, Inca, Mayan, all them people. And then came you people over from Asia, Mongolia, where you were, where you came from, and you started mixing in with the natives, who were the so-called black people. This is why a lot of you Mexicans and Latinos got dark skin, and some of you got full lips and broad noses. A few of you, very few. But those of you who have those broad noses and those thick lips, that come from your black, the mixing of your black. You got mixed in genetics of the people that were already there, the Mesoamerican. So that would really just make you an indirect descendant of them, because y'all got other things mixed in y'all. Y'all are not the original people. You are indirect descendants, some of you, of that, because you were born in that land of Mexico and all these other places, because y'all people came from Mongolia and crossed over from the Bering Straits, crossed the Bering Straits into America, where you saw our people at, where you saw the real ethnic Americans, the real American Indian or American indigenous people. That's us. And some of y'all mixed in with us. That's why if you look at the early pictures of what they say so-called Indians, they look like they was mixed with black and Asian. And like I said, our sister Vizetta brought out about the Asian slaves coming over and mixing with the so-called black women that were already over here, who were being classified by the Caucasians as Indians. They called us Indians or indigenous people. Y'all just picked that title up later, and we're going to go into that. But y'all admitted that your people come from Asia, so you're Asian. So, because if that's the case and you're native to America, you can use the term Native American, then so can the white man, because he could say, well, I've been in America for hundreds of years, so I'm native to America too. That's why I don't like that term Native American for our people. Native American is not for our people. I thought it would have been, but you know what? It's not a good title, because anybody could be just moved into a place and live there, and for a couple hundred years. Next thing you know, they'll say they native to the land because they born there. Native just means you born there. Your descendants could be born in the land, and then you could turn around and say you're native to that land. It does not mean you are indigenous to the land. That's why I said you so-called Mongoloid Indians, the people who claiming they're Indians, those are Native Americans. They're not American Indians. The American Indians are so-called black people, or the American indigenous people are so-called black people. Okay? That's who the American Indians are, the indigenous so-called black people. And the Native Americans are the Mongoloids and all the mixed people that the white man decided to accept as civilized. Because he basically was calling us the savages. And he called y'all civilized because you look more like them. Because you had the straight hair. Some of y'all had already mixed in with them. So just like today, Where you got Latinos, you got white Latinos, you got them Asian looking Latinos, and then you got the so-called black Latinos, or what y'all call Afro-Latino. Those people who you call Afro-Latinos are not African. Just like the so-called black people in America are not African. These people were native to America. These people are the natives of America. We don't look like the Africans. You see, all those terminologies and titles like African American, Native American, Indian, all those came from Caucasian people. They decided to start classifying people certain things, and then they put it in the book, and they started teaching it in your history class, and that became the general consensus of what people were. That's where you build it from. But that's not the reality. The reality is that the first people, you know, in other words, just because you come with a revisionist history, which is what Caucasians did, they came with their revisionist form of history, where they whitened everything, and they just start deciding to change people's classifications. Like they used to refer to us as Indians, or the copper-colored Indians. They used to call us that. They wasn't calling us black people till later. Then they decided we was going to go from copper-colored to colored to Negro, and then eventually black and African American. They were basically, you know, the government was basically wiping our indigenous status in America clean, and thus calling us black people. Again, I told you this before. The racism and the prejudice here in this society has nothing to do with skin color. It has everything to do with who the original people are versus the immigrants who came later who want to take the place of the original people. So we are really hated in this country as so-called black people because we are indigenous to America. If we were really Africans, in America, we wouldn't have these problems. We wouldn't have none of these problems in America. You wouldn't see the police pulling us over or shooting our people and things like that. When the last time you heard of an African getting pulled over, a tribal African or somebody directly from Africa? When the last time you hear them getting pulled over? And if they did get pulled over, it was only because they were mistaken as us. But usually, like I said, you don't really hear the Africans getting pulled over and getting bothered by the police. It's always you don't hear about Mobutu or Lungu or whoever getting pulled over. You hear about Walter Johnson, you know, Frank Washington. You see, they get pulled over and they get abused. Not the Africans, not Mobutu in them. They don't get abused. You don't hear about them getting abused. Because the white man, they don't bother with the Africans because they know that the Africans and the Americans, which is us, and the Africans are totally different people. They know that. And the Africans got, those who made it over here, were able to come over here, they got white status. The Africans got white status. They don't classify them as black like us. They only classify the indigenous people, the first people, the ones who put civilization here, the Mesoamericans, which are your bronze, copper-colored people falsely being called black, us. They made us the bottom of the barrel, the bottom class. They made the indigenous people, the original people, the bottom, and they stacked everybody up on top of us. And the person that's on the top is the Caucasians. That's how that works. We at the bottom and everybody stacked up on top of us to keep us in our quote-unquote place. Because at one time, this whole entire place was ours, and we had all the land. And y'all came and mixed in with us, you so-called, the Mongoloids, people came from Asia. That's why I said people like your Fat Joes and all of them, they got the slanted eyes. If you trace back their heritage and DNA, and even I brought out with the lady on, but you know, you got a lot of Mexicans who looked at that Asian look to them. And they know that they trace their heritage right back to Asia. So y'all really Asians, not American. Because if that's the case, then why can't so-called black people call themselves American? If it's you know, you could just come from some place and just decide that you could forget all about your history, and all of a sudden you are native to a place. Okay, let's just go with the African slave story for a minute. So if black people was brought over here in 1555 or 1619, which is a lie, we was always here. If we were brought over here then, so that's like 400 plus years in. Why did we still calling ourselves African? Why are we calling ourselves African American? The white man ain't calling himself European American. The you so-called Mongoloids, you people claim to be the Native Americans, you ain't calling yourself Asian Americans, which is what you really should be calling yourselves. You're not doing that. You calling yourself Native American, like your Asian ancestry don't even matter. You know why they don't want to trace back their Asian ancestry? Because if you trace back their Asian ancestry to when they crossed the Bering Strait and you look at where they came from, you won't see no Indian headdresses. You won't see no feathered headdresses. You won't see no teepees, no clothing, none of the stuff they did. You won't see that. You will not see that. You will not see no feathered headdresses, because that culture is a culture that you appropriated from our people when you came into America. When you started mixing in with the people, you started taking on their culture. Perfect example of that, your Latinos. When they came over here, they was all about pointy shoes and cha-cha-cha and pointy shoes, and they didn't mess with the Morenos, and we was monkeys and jungle music. Then after a while, you seen that we the monkey in the jungle and the soul music, y'all started feeling it. So next thing you know, y'all start wanting to rhyme, and y'all start talking about when y'all want to break dance, all the stuff we was already doing, drawing graffiti like us, because the first graffiti artist was a brother by the name of Cornbread out of Philadelphia. He was the first graffiti artist. But y'all basically start taking on our attributes, using the word nigger, calling each other nigger. Yeah, my nigger. You get that from us, man. And I told you where the word nigger come from the word niggardly, which, you know, we'll go into that again. But y'all follow what I'm saying? So at best, you Latinos, you Mexicans who claim in Mesoamerican, you are indirect descendants of the Mesoamericans, because if you got so-called black blood in you, then that connects you to Mesoamerica as an indirect descendant. But the direct descendants of the Mesoamericans, the direct descendants of the Olmecs, the Aztec, the Inca, the Mayan, the Toltecs is here in America being called African Americans today. Falsely being called African Americans. Falsely being called black. Falsely being labeled black. Falsely being labeled African American. Falsely being labeled Negroes. The original American Indian or indigenous people are us. The feathered headdresses, the bows and arrows, all that's nothing but a ripoff from the Mayans. All that was ripoff. The oldest civilization in North America was set by the Mayans, which were the copper-colored races, aka black people. You people are not native to America, you are Asian. And again, it's no shot at you. You are indirect, but that's as far as it goes. You're looking at the direct descendant of the Mayans. You're looking at the direct descendant of the Olmecs. You're looking at the direct descendant of the Aztec, the Inca, the Mayan. It's all the same people that folded into and became many different tribes in the Americas, in which you got so-called black people today. So let me go on. I think I explained that well. We got any questions? All right, we're cooking with Greeks. Let's go. Why American Indians were called savages and Native Americans called civilized. Well, first of all, there was a time where the American Indians or the American indigenous people were called savages. And the reason why they were called savages is because they were really talking about us. They were talking about us. And like I said, they referred to us as savage because we were serious and we were a vicious people. And a lot of the people that you see that was in slavery here in this country, they are prisoners of war. A lot of them were captured. They were fighting with the Caucasians to keep their land. A lot of them got ran off or killed. And whoever survived they made slaves into. Some of them became indentured servants because the United States government was on a Indian Removal Act, which means a nigger removal act. That's what the Indian Removal Act was. The Nigger Removal Act. The so-called removal of so-called black people who were having their lands taken from them. This is black people, not you Mongoloid Indians. Not you so-called Mongoloids who are calling yourself Indians wearing the headdress today. Because number one, y'all didn't even think that it was possible for people to own land. Y'all never believed in owning land. Y'all, everything your so-called Indians that they showed you, the Asian mixed ones, that they calling Native Americans today, they squatted on land. They squatted on the land. Like I said, these people were camping out on the land. They wasn't cultivating the land. They wasn't growing nothing on the land. They didn't have any animals. They didn't have any houses built on the land. All they stuff was a bunch of damn break down teepees. They break their teepee down, put the shit on the horse and go about their business. The white man moved them all over the damn country like that. They was like I told you, they was like a damn touring circus pretty much. A lot of these and all they did was just section you off in one section. They call it reservations. But they was just moving you guys around. Again, you never have you how often have you ever seen Indians being farmers? So-called Native Americans being farmers. You see, they had to teach them that skill, but they didn't know how to farm the land. How you gonna be native to a land and don't know how to farm on the land? If you supposedly native to it. Yeah, I've never seen, rarely have you ever heard anything about, you've heard about black farmers and white farmers. I've never heard anything about Indian farmers. I'm not saying they don't have any Native American farmers now, but back then they wasn't farming no land. They was living off the land, eating buffalo, whatever they could get off the land on some camping ground type of thing. A lot of heavy protein, buffalo and things like that. Whatever, I guess they could corn, whatever they was picking up from the real indigenous people, meaning us. We was the only ones that was growing on the land. And that's, again, that proves that we not African, because if we was African, how we know how to grow on the land better than everybody else? How we know how to grow on the land better than even the white man? I told you on the plantation, they didn't just have so-called black people picking cotton. They had you growing it too. You see, they don't tell you that part. They had you growing the cotton. They had you tending to the fields. That's what tending to the fields was. You were actually growing the crops. Okay? They didn't know how to grow the crops. They're not going to bring a whole bunch of people from another place or so-called Africa to pick cotton. How stupid is that? When you have all these indentured servants, black and white here, who could have did that? That's not the same thing. A lot of people they call slaves were really indentured servants. How you know that is because you hear people talking about, people was buying their freedom. People who were slaves would buy their freedom. How does a slave buy their freedom? How does a slave buy their freedom? A slave is just a slave. You ain't got no access to money. That means you got to serve your master forever. But if you can buy your freedom, when you've heard of slaves buying their freedom, that means they weren't slaves. They were indentured servants. And they would enter into contracts over a set period of time, be it 7 years or whatever. And after the 7 years up and they don't work their time, then whatever money they saved or whatever their case is, they would be free. You see, that's how that worked. And a lot of so-called black people entered into those agreements with Caucasians because at the time, the government was just basically pushing us off the land. So the only thing that we had, you want to be an indentured servant and work. And then a lot of that got mistaken for slavery. Now, you did have certain people who were straight up slaves. You had people that were straight up slaves, and you had people who was indentured servants. It was a lot more indentured servants than slaves. And you got a lot of slave uprisings. But let me go ahead with that. But anyway, so about the so our people, because we were fighting all the time, there were a lot of slave uprisings and revolts, which they call Indian revolts. You see, they were calling them Indian revolts or indigenous revolts. The fights between the Caucasians and the Indians or the indigenous, who you now call black people, it was on and popping. We was killing a lot of them, man. They don't like talking about that. In history, they have a record of about 500 and some odd, and this is in recorded by Caucasians. They counted like at least 520 something uprisings, slave uprisings here in this country. Over 525. That's just recorded. So there was always a lot of slave uprisings. It was always a lot of people killing off their slave masters and going free and whatnot, or just fighting until they got killed or died. It was a lot of slave uprisings here. So whenever they tell that lie that, our people didn't fight for their freedom, we just sit there and bitch, that's a goddamn lie. That is a goddamn lie. Most of the people who you see who came out of indentured servitude, that's what it was. A lot of people was indentured servants. Did you have certain people that was kept in slavery for the rest of their life and beaten all that? Yeah, that happened. That happened. But you also had a lot of people who wasn't trying to hear that. And a lot of people didn't go for that. A lot of plantations got burnt down, not just in New Orleans, but here in the Americas, all over the place. Plantations was getting burnt down. People was escaping off plantations, killing their slave masters, killing the whole family as they should have. Plenty of that happened. Now, those are the people that were called savages, because we had the audacity to fight back. We just didn't let people enslave us like that. We had the audacity to fight back. So that's why they call us savages. Whereas you so-called Mongoloid Indians who was riding on the plains with the white man, you Asian-looking Indians with the straight hair and the feathers in your head, that the culture y'all jacked from the Mayans, from our people, from the real indigenous people. Because we're going to get into it. Let's go. Because y'all claim, a lot of you Latinos, and y'all claim that, oh, we saying this is all some pseudo stuff and some pseudo, but I ain't heard y'all come up with not one thing to refute all the stuff that we had to prove that we are the real American Indians and not Africans. I haven't heard one thing that y'all got to refute other than some made up shit, but all could be debunked. All of that. But anyway, so the savages were the ones, the black ones who were fighting. Like today, the so-called white men call black people savages all the time. They always call us savages. It's funny that the savages are calling us savages because we dared to want to be free. We didn't want to serve no animals, these beasts, these goddamn humans, because we didn't want to serve them. How dare we not want to serve them and give over our land? How dare us? You know, there's a I just came across this today. They said there's a sickness that they said that the Native Americans were probably what they meant. The American Indians said that white people have, and it was a disease. They said that white people had. I'm gonna read it right now. I put it on my page. Huh? Waco. What is it called? Waco or something like that. Waco. Okay. This was a disease that they said the quote unquote Native Americans, which was probably the American Indians, our people, said that white people had, you know, from their interaction with them. This disconnect from morality, this disconnect from it. Basically, it was basically a disease called white coat, something like that. Whitecosis or whitecosi or whatever. But you try to pronounce it, I don't know, but it was very interesting. And it was a white man he was basically reading it, and he found out what it meant that the American Indians were saying that white people had. That they have a disconnect from reality, a disconnect from morality. You know, they accuse people of doing things that they actually doing. You know, Watiko? Watiko. Watiko. Look that up, Watiko. The American Indians say that most white people have Watiko. That's what they call it. Basically, that y'all crazy and that you're off as fuck and that y'all are delusional and that a lot of you these people at that time, they say, you know, most of y'all have that mindset. Like today, when you see these white people have this mindset of white supremacy, like they think that this is their country. They actually think that they're native to America. They actually think they got a right to tell people where they can and can't be in a place where they're not even native of, or that they're not even indigenous to their damn self. You know, how the people who believe that they didn't really come from Europe, that they was actually native to America, and they got the right to tell other people to go back to some place like us, how they tell us we got to go back to, we need to go back to Africa, even though we didn't come from Africa. Those kind of people, basically delusional and mentally ill people. Now, that was a diagnosis our people made about white people back then. Whitecosis or whatever. White, what is it again? Waco? W-E-I-K-O. Waco. Sound like white something. Wetco. It's called Wetco, right? W-E-T? Wet?
No, yeah, no, it is W-E-T,
Watiko. There it is, Watiko. Which sounds a lot like wet, as in water. That lunar, the lunar frequency, the water, you know, that lunacy, you know, that's what they were saying these people suffer from, Watiko. You see, bugged out of your minds. Our people said that. It went into more, but look that up. Watiko on YouTube. White people suffer from Native Americans. They say Native Americans, but put Native American Indians say white people suffer from Watiko. W-E-T-I-K-O. Watiko. They said basically back then that was bugged out your mind. But anyway, to go back into that, they were basically saying that the people who was doing all the fighting with the Caucasian, our people, killing them off and things like that, like the Seminole Wars, which was really, they said was a niggas fighting. They said the Seminole was niggas fighting in Florida. Our people fighting back was considered savage to them because we wouldn't lay down and bow down and, you know, basically spread them, you know, and just submit. So us fighting back is considered savage. Now the Mongoloid Indians who helped the white man out, who was allowed to own slaves, who was called the 5 civilized tribes, right? Basically, your Mongoloid mixed Indians, the ones who got the Asian and black mixing them, and they start mixing them with the Caucasians, the ones, you know, who live on the reservation with the white people today, those are your Native Americans. That was a classification that was created by Caucasians for those people. You know, the mixed race or the mixed race people who basically ripping off Mayan ancestry and calling it Native American now. So those are your Native Americans that live on the reservation. Those are your civilized Indians that they call them. The civilized, the mixed race ones that they call them. That's why I say it's two totally different classifications. The American Indians are us. The Native Americans are them. Those are the fake Indians. Have black people been living on borrowed time in America? Yeah. Black people, so-called black people, have been living on borrowed time in America. Why do I say that? Because this whole black thing, this whole individuality thing, this whole we don't need no leader, I'm my own God thing. Let me tell you something about that. As we have entered the third dimension, as the third dimension is more and more prevalent and the second dimension is erasing itself, the place of possession, that means all things are up for grabs. All right? Thank you. All things up for grabs. So I said before, black people are not considered people because you're not really considered a people until you are together as a community, as a collective. So only time you're going to be considered a people and a respected people is when you're together as a community, i.e. example, the so-called Jewish community. The Jewish community is respected as a community because they are together in mind, body, and spirit. The Jewish community are together. They are together. And I applaud the Jewish community for that. The Jewish community stand together like 10 toes down as a people, and they don't go against each other. They really are together as a people. They believe in, think, and follow and do all the same things together. They're together, mind, body, and spirit. They are a community. You got the Asian community. They together. They got their beliefs. They together, lockstep, mind, body, and spirit. You got your Italians and all these other races of people who are together, except for so-called black people. So, with all of the things that have been happening to so-called black people in America, what you all starting to find out that there is no such thing as a black community because y'all not together, and you can't commune under something called blackness. That's like saying we together for nothing. Because when I ask you, well, what is your language? What is your nationality? What is your, what is your thoughts on a higher power? What bonds you all together as a community? You can't tell me. So if you're gonna tell me that we all a community just because of the color of our skin, that's incorrect. That's not what makes a community. That's not what makes a community. What makes a community is a people who live for, of, and by the same thing. That's a community. People who think the same or believe the same. I say think or believe. We say we think the same. We don't believe nothing. But we think the same. We live the same way. We follow a certain law and order in our community. We follow. We're not like black people. We don't live like individuals, and we don't. I'm talking about as the bronze race, because we don't consider ourselves black people. We consider ourselves bronze people or the bronze race. So we got rid of the whole black thing a long time ago. We consider ourselves bronze people, bronze men and bronze women in the American Republic. We live by a certain law, certain order, things we don't do as bronze men and bronze women. As bronze people, with certain things we don't do. We don't do what black people do. We don't sow the seeds of individuality. We don't follow the ways of the beast and their gods and their belief system. We don't do all those things we don't let our children get educated by the beast. We don't do all that. And we don't hate nobody. We don't hate nobody, but we just don't mess with you. We don't fuck with you. Anyway, so, I say black people living on borrowed time because the time to be a community in America is now. Because look at all this stuff that's befalling y'all. Huh? Look at all this stuff that's befalling y'all as a people. The police keep on attacking you, beating the hell out you. You keep getting shown that your votes don't matter. You keep voting in the damn in the elections and politics, and y'all don't get nothing out of it. They just got y'all on the damn voting treadmill where you niggas get on the treadmill and you just vote, and you don't get nothing. Everybody else get tangibles. Or the Mexicans, the Latinos, the gays, the lesbians, you know, all the community people. The communities, they get money. That's who gets money. Communities get money. Y'all are not a community. That's why you're not getting any reparations. Y'all not together. That the government knows that black people are not a community. They know y'all nothing but a group of individuals. That's why you're not going to get any reparations. That's why you don't get any respect in America. America only respects communities. People who are of, for, and by the same thing. Who stand for the same things. Black people, you ask black people what they stand for, you're going to get like 50 different goddamn questions. More than that. You're going to get a whole bunch of different questions and things like that. So that's confusion. And when there's confusion there, you can't build a foundation on any confusion. That's why there's no such thing as a black community. Because that's all confusion. Y'all sitting around here believing your skin is black. You don't even know why they called you black people. I said this, the most progressive thing you could do is stop being black people. Leave that classification alone. Because it's just a classification. Get that thing out of your head that we got black skin. We don't got no damn black skin. We don't have any black skin. We have no tie to black whatsoever other than what the so-called white people, Caucasian, tried to link us to, which was meant to be the opposite of the bad end of them, which was meant to identify us as the indigenous people of this land who are going to be deprived of resources. That's why I said all the white people are the immigrants, right? Not necessarily Caucasian, right? All the approved United States citizens are considered white. And the ones who are not part of the United States citizens or civilization is the indigenous people, the so-called American Indians or black people. They were given the title black. So you don't have to call them American Indians anymore. You don't have to call them the indigenous people. You don't have to call them that anymore. Just call them black people. That's all that really is. So until our people stop being black people, until we come into the knowledge of who we are as a people, and I'm giving it to my people, as a collective, as a real community who live for, of, and by each other, who live by law and order, we're going to keep on. Your time is numbered here. You're going to see them getting rid of black people left and right. You're going to see more police brutality step it up. You're going to see more of the communities pushing black people to the side and making y'all basically a fringe group in America, meaning y'all are on the fringes. You niggas are not considered the people, man. That's really what it is now. They still calling you black people. What does that tell you? And then they got the nerve to call you African American. That's an even bigger insult. You do know they only calling you African American not because they believe you come from Africa. They call you African American because they want to constantly put in your mind that you were a slave that they brought into from Africa to America, which is a lie. Because why else would they be calling you African American when you did not that? Because that's a terminology that like Italian American, French American, German American, which the Caucasians don't even use that no more. They cut ties their European ancestry, a lot of them. But anyway, to use a term like African American would imply that so-called quote unquote African Americans are immigrants, like we immigrated to America, like we came over to a place freely, or you know that we came any place, and that's false. We were always in America. We were always here. We didn't come from Africa. We don't have no African origins. Stop believing that lie that all so-called black people come from Africa. That's a lie. That is a big lie. That all life started in Africa. An even bigger lie that came from these Caucasians, these pseudoscientists who just made it up and they didn't provide no real evidence or proof of anything. And a lot of you so-called pro-blacks believe this BS from them. A lot of you guys are nothing but damn brown pants wearing boule coons, man. I'm gonna get on y'all asses in a minute. Hold on. Is African American just another way? Hey, here we go. Is African American just another way of calling black people slaves in America? Yeah. That's the only, listen, all that African American stuff, all that crap, saying all of these titles like Native American, African American, all of these titles denote something. You see, all these titles denote something. Meaning they mean something. African American is the title that was given for the false history and the false voyage of our people supposedly into America from Africa as slaves. I was watching Corey Holcomb the other night, and I was trying to give him some information over there. He kind of halfway read it, but a lot of so-called black people, a lot of y'all mind is closed to reality, because your mind has basically been wrapped around the lies of these Caucasians here in America who have given their white revisionist history, on what really happened. I'm gonna do a cast on it called American History, and then white revisionist American history. All right. In other words, the later history where the white man started basically whitewashing us out of the history of America, whitewashing us out of the history of America, and trying to replace our image with other people, like how they replaced the American Indians with the Native Americans. Okay. They replaced the American Indian or the American indigenous people with the Native Americans, the fake Indians you see today. And I'm going to say something to you so-called Native Americans. If y'all so badass and claim that y'all was warriors and you was fighting the white man, then why we don't see you motherfuckers no more? Where y'all at? Why we don't see you no more? Why you ain't, where the Native American restaurants at? Why we don't see you no more? Don't excuse my language. I curse sometimes, it is what it is. But I want to know, why is it that we don't see y'all no more? Where's your Native American restaurants? And I asked this on the broadcast. Where's your Native American restaurants? Where's your Native American music? Because according to them, they were here first for thousands of years. Then came the white man. And then came us, who the white man brought over. So in other words, we're the third group of people in a migration that were forced from Africa into America, according to the story, right? Well, my question is this. If your people are the so-called Native Americans, Indians or Native Indians or whatever, and you've been here for thousands of years, where's your influence at? Where's your music? How come we don't see American Indian boy bands singing Indian music here in America? How come we don't hear Indian music on, or so-called Indian music, as y'all claim, Native American music? How come we don't hear Native American music on the radio? How come we don't hear Native American? Where's the Native American restaurants at? Give me one Native American restaurant. How come we don't see groups of Native Americans walking all around in America since there was so many of you? Now, if y'all such great warriors, y'all should still be all over the place. But if you telling me y'all was all wiped out, then y'all wasn't that great warrior. Y'all wasn't that great a warrior. If I don't see y'all out in the public no more, that means that y'all numbers are basically, deteriorating. Now, I don't know what kind of warriors y'all were, where you was doing was fighting for your freedom, but yet y'all don't exist no more. Or y'all done been reduced to living on reservations. And then my question is this. Why is it the white man's allowed to live on your reservation? Y'all got white people living on your reservation. You got white people who have mixed into your tribe and call themselves tribal leaders. Caucasians, straight up Caucasians. How come y'all ain't beef with the white man about wearing your so-called Indian headdress with the feathers and the plumes and the war bonnets? You can buy one of them damn Indian headdresses on damn Amazon and all these other platforms. How come you so-called Native Americans who claim that's your heritage and your history, how sacred it is, how come it's being sold by the white man? How is the white man able to live on your plantations? The same white man who you say y'all was fighting with and took y'all land. How come they able to live on the res? I want answers to that. How is it that they was able to wear your headdresses like it's a damn costume? Basically, if that's really your culture, how is it that they able to wear your headdresses? How is it that they able to live on your land that's supposed to be reserved for you? Make that make sense to me. Answer: because y'all not the real Indians. You're not. That's why y'all don't give a shit about the headdress. Y'all put on suits just like the white man now. You let the white man live on your reservation, and y'all was owning slaves. You was allowed to own the savage Indians, who y'all call black people. You was allowed to own them. You see, and y'all even refer to our people as the Buffalo Soldiers because of our fierce fighting. That when we joined up with the Confederate Army, and you referred to us as the Buffalo Soldier because we had woolly hair like the buffaloes. You see a buffalo, it got like buffaloes. The actual buffalo, if you look at the picture of a buffalo, buffaloes have woolly hair like they got afros. So the so-called Indians that was referring to us as Buffalo Soldiers, the so-called Native Americans. They called us the Buffalo Soldiers because we had the woolly hair like the buffaloes. And we were fierce fighters. That's the savages that the white man talking about. We the savages that they were talking about. We the savage Indians, not y'all. Because if y'all was the savage Indians, the white man wouldn't been living on your damn reservation right now. There would, if y'all was the savage Indians, we would, and this is all your culture, we would hear we should see a whole lot of Native American restaurants. We should see a whole lot of Native American walking around out here in the country all over. We don't see y'all nowhere. Again, y'all was just, that term Native American was just cobbled together by Caucasians here, the Caucasian history revisionists. They cobbled together that name Native American as a way to replace the savage Indians, the savage American Indians, which was so-called black people. And then they eventually start calling us Negro and black, and we became Negroes and black. Then all of a sudden we came from Africa. Same way they got the so-called Hindus in India, which is currently called India, that's not India. But they start getting the Hindus from Hindustan to call themselves East Indian and call themselves Indian, and they're not even Indian. They're Hindus. And that original place of India was called Hindustan before they changed it in the 50s. Okay? And as I suspect, that was a favor to the Americans for them to become Indian, because they wanted to start erasing that whole Indian terminology and any links it had to so-called black people here in America. That's why they split our, they end up calling them Indian, calling you guys Native Americans, and ended up calling us Negroes and African Americans. All these fake classifications that y'all seem to hang your hat on. Let me see. I wasn't going to do this, but I'll touch on this away from the subject. I asked the question: why too much attention is paid to females and their feelings in the 3D world? Why is too much attention being paid to females and their feelings? Now, I'm going somewhere with this. I hope you don't think I'm going to be cold and harsh and chauvinistic and anything. No, it's not. Why I say that is because too much energy in the society is paid to take people's emotions, right? Emotions are fleeting. Too much energy is paid to how people feel instead of how they're supposed to think. You see, you can't build up a strong thinking class of people when you have to cater to people's emotions. You see, it comes a time where people have to tuck their emotions, tuck their emotion like they tuck their tail between their legs and keep it moving, man. You see, this is the reason why our people don't have a community. This is why we sitting around here still calling ourselves black people, because a lot of y'all feel some kind of emotional attachment to blackness. You feel some kind of emotional attachment to Africa or Pan-Africanism. And in your feelings, while you're in your feelings, our heritage and our true culture has been given away to other people. Our true stance in the world and our true identity, which is shown in the 1828 Merriam-Webster Dictionary definition of American, the copper-colored races, the copper-colored Aboriginal people of this land who were known as Americans before the Europeans came and took on that title and their descendants. So why is it that we were not able to recognize our identification as the copper-colored people? Why do we not embrace that? Why are we still embracing blackness and not who we actually are? Because our skin is copper-colored. Hello. It is many different shades of bronze and copper-colored, from the lightest beige complexion to the darkest dark complexion of bronze copper. We don't have black skin. We're not African. We are those North American Indians or North American indigenous people who are the descendants of the Mayans, the Aztec, the Inca, the Olmec. We are the Mesoamericans who came from the south of America, the central of America, and made our way into North America as the Mayans and set up the first civilizations. And those other people who you see calling themselves Indians, those people came over as Asians, mixed in with black women. But again, back to this. We can't connect to that because so many of our people have been made to form an emotional attachment to Pan-Africanism, to blackness, to slavery. We've been made to get in our feelings about that. To whereas when we hear real knowledge, real history, when we hear that, we disregard it because we got this emotional attachment for Pan-Africanism. We got this emotional attachment for blackness. We got this attachment for being Negroes. You know, some fake classifications that was given to us by Caucasians. We get emotionally attached to that, and then we want to start fighting against the reality of who we are as the American indigenous people. We start letting other people try to guilt us into wanting to be black and Negro and African, getting us to form this fake connection with a place we have no connection to. We don't have no connection to Africa. I'm talking about our so-called black people who were born here in America, whose family go back past slavery, who didn't come, who was on no slave ships, whose family go back past slavery. No, we don't have no connection with Africa. And you got people who are trying to guilt us into it. The biggest tool that they used to program and guilt us into attaching ourselves to Africa was what? The movie Roots. The movie Roots, a fake story that was written by Alex Haley. You know, because the fake story that was written by Alex Haley, where he got sued in 1977 in upstate New York court for plagiarizing a man's work called Harold Corlander. He got sued in upstate New York court by and for plagiarizing this guy Harold Corlander's book, The African. Go look it up. This is where he got the character Kunta Kinte from. His so-called African ancestor. Alex Haley, you was full of shit. Alex Haley. You made up that fake biography about Malcolm X. You see, he was one of these boule coons. And a sodomite, allegedly. You see, a lot of these black boule coons who sat up here and they was pushing this whole Pan-African thing. Trying to lie to our people and get us to believe that we not really the American indigenous people or Indians of this place. And again, question. If the so-called black people are not the real American Indians of America, then why, and the word Indian is not associated with us, then why do you refer to our people in Jamaica and in the islands as West Indians? Why do you refer to them as West Indians? If the term Indian has nothing to do with us. Y'all now trying to call them Afro-Caribbean because now you're trying to make up this fake terminology. Like I said, a lot of fake identification to keep linking us back to Africa. Listen, I'm going to tell y'all people, for our bronze copper colored people in the islands and in Puerto Rico and Mexico, those of our people still got their bronze copper tone and our woolly hair. Stop allowing people to call you Afro anything. Stop letting people call you Afro anything. You people are American, man. We have nothing to do with Africa at all. But we have to stop putting energy into people's feelings. My point on that is, in one of the topics, we got to stop putting energy into people's feelings. Because while we putting energy into people's feelings and their emotions, real things are happening in front of our face, and we need all of our mind clear and focused to deal with the things that are coming at us. But we can't do that when we got to get caught up in people's emotions and what they don't like and how they feel. People get delayed, people get stuck, we miss the boat and we don't get to deal with situations how we're supposed to deal with them because our mental energy and all of our mental focus is going into catering to these emotional people. And that has to stop. Real women, aside from the females, again, because you got women in the world, you got females in the world. Females will always have you linked in a whole bunch of emotional drama. Women will not. Women you could talk straight to. And they see the bigger picture. I've dealt with women. I'm dealing with women. You see, so they always look at the bigger picture, which is a future. And we ain't got time to get in our feelings about a goddamn thing. We in this for to live and survive and come together as a community. We look into the future. We ain't got time to get caught up in nobody's emotions because all emotions are temporary. They're always fleeting. Don't give me your emotions. We don't need them going forward as a people. That's what stunts our growth from growing up. Okay, I already touched on it. What race is a Native American? like I said, you Native Americans are mixed people. Y'all really Asians, but you're mixed with like all kind of stuff. So y'all not even really a race. There's no such thing as a Native American. That's a fake title. Just like African American. There's no such thing as an African American. Elon Musk is an African American. Charlize Theron, these are Caucasians. They African Americans. So hey, Umar, go give Charlize Theron and Elon Musk some of them Kentacloth head things. Maybe they'll put up money for your school. Cause I hear you got white people back in your school now. Cause you was quick to tell this guy, Dion, and I don't follow these Negroes in sports, but whatever. These Negroes in sports. Again, that was meant to be a shot because y'all get too caught up in that sport and fancy. But anyway, you got on Deion Sanders, he definitely American Indian. He definitely indigenous, Deion Sanders. My family, all black people, all so-called black people are. But anyway, even you, Umar, cut the shit. But anyway, you sit up here and you got on Deion Sanders for going to the leaving the so-called HBCSU or whatever bullshit. You got on him for doing that and leaving Mississippi to go to Colorado to work with these Caucasians, and they offered him all this money. You got on him for turning his back on black people, but you the same for going to white people. But you the same person that went and said you can't deal with black people, and you got white people to help you finish your school. You said that in the same interview you just did for the Breakfast Club. So it was wrong for him to go to white people when he needed to get his money up, but it was okay for you when you wanted to get your school open for you to go not use black contracts and go to white ones. Make that make sense to me. You wasn't pro-black or Pan-African when you wanted to go with the white contractors, but he's wrong for wanting to take care of his family and take care of himself. He got to be loyal to niggas that's breaking in his damn locker and stealing his shit out of his car. He got to be loyal to people like that. Niggas. Miss me with that. Let me see. Oh, back to you, Umar. I got a question about this. Why is Umar Johnson building a Pan-African centered school in America for so-called black American children when they're not African? That's a good question. Why is Umar Johnson building an African-centered school here? Why are you trying to you're pushing this lie that our people are African. Number one, you're pushing the lie that our people are not natives of America, that we're not the real indigenous people of America. You're pushing this Pan-African lie. Okay, which again, the fathers of Pan-Africanism is Melville Herkovitz, France Boas, and their black apprentice / pupil, aka they Boule butt boy, W.E.B. Du Bois. They pushed that whole Pan-African lie, man. They the fathers of Pan-Africanism and anthropology and African American studies. Two Caucasian Jews. You see? And not that I care that they Jews, I could care less. I just got a problem with anybody who is not us telling us who we are. I got a problem with anybody who is not us telling us who we are. And people might say, well, why you ain't got no problem with Karemio? Hey, if you telling the truth, I got no problem with it. But if you're going to tell a lie and make up stuff, and we supposed to believe we African because some Caucasian said so, you know what they did? Like you said, Dane Calloway, shout out to you. No, what they did, all they did was go, hey, these people here in America, these so-called black people in America look like the so-called black people, which we do not. Look like so-called black people in Africa. But some of us look the same, because like I told you about some of them are ancient Americans, but that's another thing. But on average, we don't look like Africans. We are totally different people. But because we got the same skin complexion, we supposed to be the same people. That's the only thing he came up with. No DNA, none of that stuff. They wasn't doing. All he just said was based on what he see. You niggas all look alike, so y'all all the same. That's basically what he was saying, which is some of the most racist shit they even say. Oh, you niggas all look alike. That's basically all you niggas look alike. Mr. Herkovitz. You see, I'm being nice calling you Mr. That's all he did. And that was good enough for people like your Umar Johnson, all these Pan-Africans, that a white man said, oh, you niggas all look alike, so you must be African. No, you're not native to America, even though we are, because the oldest the oldest bones, the oldest fossils of the first Americans, thousands and thousands of years ago, the first natives found in either Central or South America, somewhere down there in that area. The first oldest people found in America. They take the DNA on the skull and everything. Look it up right online. The oldest people found in the Americas is not the Asians, because that's what they thought they was going to find when the archaeologists, Caucasian archaeologists, just so you know, they ain't a black archaeologists, because y'all love to say, oh, you know, there's some pseudo stuff, these black such and such people. In other words, because we're labeled so-called quote-unquote black, anything that we find out about ourselves is invalid. It's what white people say that it's valid. So, okay, now you got a white man, or this guy, I think he's white or Asian, or one of your own kind, Latino, who dug up the skulls on the first natives of America, the first people who are the first living people in the Americas. They dug up the skull, found the bones, oldest found here, and when they reconstructed the face and did all the DNA, it was a so-called black woman. And she wasn't African. It was a so-called, it looked like a black woman today. Go look the face up. How that happen? How that happen? How come she wasn't Asian? And if she was here, obviously she wasn't here by herself. She had to come from parents who came from obviously, and she had people around her. So obviously it was a civilization. These people that were here that were so-called black people who were not African. Who were not African. Where they come from? Where'd they go? They from America. Atlantis. Which that's another story. Another account. We ain't gonna go into that. That's going deeper. We'll pick that up. But that's where they from. Stop this nonsense that we came from Africa. Because, okay, if you say we came from Africa, so we came from the ground of Africa? Because people say the stupidest thing. They'll say, well, you have to come from someplace else and come to America. Well, let's just say let's say we come from Africa. So you saying we came from the ground of Africa, with the dust of the ground? Why couldn't, if you come from one land and you're indigenous, why can you be indigenous to another land? Why is it impossible to think that we are American? Why is that impossible to think that we are indigenous American? Why are y'all so hooked on this idea that we come from Africa? I'm talking to you Pan-Africanists. I'm talking to all you pro-blacks. I'm talking to all you Negroes who believe and got emotionally caught up on the goddamn root story, that fake ass story where they put it on. Because I was the first one to see that. I'm part of that generation of people that was brain stained by roots. I'm part of that generation. We sat up there and watched that nonsense in 1977. It was a damn mini-series with Alex Haley, where we sat up there and we got all emotional about this bullshit. Alex Haley and his fake ancestor Kunta Kinte that he stole out of some white man's book, Harold Corlander, that you lost the case, Alex Haley. Why don't they tell you about that? Why do they keep promoting because they redid Roots, the mini-series? Why are they still promoting Roots as Alex Haley's family roots and why are they still promoting it that way? That this is really real characters and that this is his biological story. Maybe the people on this side, that's he talking about, but ain't no African connection to there's no Kunta Kinte and there's no African connection. He made that up. He copied it from somebody else. So if we supposed to be African, why did y'all have to go and make up why couldn't you take some of these? Why couldn't these Caucasian producers, the Wahlberg Company, ABC, why couldn't you go and find some of these black people who had this African ancestry? Since we come from Africa, surely you could find a black person who had a African ancestry who talk about the slaves, got passed down some way that you could have, used their story instead of having to go to Alex Haley, who this goddamn plagiarist, this liar, who plagiarized from this man's book, Harold Corlander. All you gotta do is look it up. Don't believe me. Look it up. So because they were using Roots as a programming tool for our people. Roots was meant to be a programming tool to finally kill this idea, whatever was left in our heads, that we were native to this land, that we are indigenous to this land. To finally kill that idea in our head and get us to believe this nonsense that we was brought in millions from Africa to America by these Caucasians. Y'all really believe this nonsense. You really believe this nonsense. You know there's no slave ships, right? They can't even find these slave ships. All it is talk of slave ships. There's no proof that there were ever any African slave ships. You do know that. Now, Corey Holcomb asked the interesting thing. I go on this thing, he goes, well, it had to be African slave ships because our people was on slave ships getting sold. No. Caucasians came here. They saw our people here working on the land, owning the land, farming the land, because we was, like I said, from our Mayan ancestors who came over here and started naming these lands and things like that, setting up the indigenous people, basically start building on the land, farming on the land, setting up communities. And when the Caucasians came in from Europe, dirty and stinking and starving, not knowing, happy to just get the hell out of Europe, out of England, wherever they was coming from, they was happy to get the hell out of there, full of diseases and everything else. And they came into this whole new land. They just basically started to blend in gradually, trying to be cool with the people and stuff like that. You know, like how it basically looks like how white people do when they move into a neighborhood that's all black, like what I'm seeing now. They come in as friends and they start to, you know, basically, hi, neighbor, can you help us survive? Can you help us live? Like how, you know, how the Caucasians did when they came over here, because they didn't know how to basically hunt on the land or farm or do anything. So they were basically scrounging for food, trying to hunt, basically trying to feed their family. A lot of times they resorted to cannibalism, like as in the Donner Party. Y'all know about that story with the Donner Party. That happened with a lot of them doing that when they first came over here in the early 1600s. They started coming over here around that time, start just sailing and just coming over here. A lot of them died on the voyage over here. A lot of them was sick with diseases. A lot of them, they spread it to our people. You know, you had some bed wenches over here, some American Indian bed wenches that was laying with these Europeans that came over here, got diseases. So a lot of diseases got spread like that. You see, they don't talk about that. That's the real history. You see, a lot of you men, y'all was laying, some of y'all laid with them, I guess, you know, I don't know, but a lot of American Indian, so-called black women was laying with these Europeans that came over here. These dirty, some of the Europeans that made their way over here, the males. And they, a lot of them were dirty and stinking, and one, like I said, they ain't have a pot to piss in, the window to throw it out of, eating rats on their way over on the ships, eating rats, boiling rats. That's how they was living. That's how they came over here. You see, that's the real American history right there. And they basically start setting up shop, blending in. More and more of them came over. Next thing you know, they start setting up colonies. Next thing you know, they start passing law. They are bringing their guns in, gradually setting up the government over time. Next thing you know, they still being cool with the so-called black, American Indians, so-called black people. You know, because they need these people because these are the people that are here. These are the people that are anchored here. And whenever you got people that are anchored in a country, because our people was all over the place. They want to act like we wasn't here. But we was all over the place. They was just calling us Indians or indigenous people. So you start anchoring in with these people. You start learning their ways. You start taking on things that you learned from them. They take on things from you. So we basically start interacting with the Caucasian, the European. You also had black people that came from Europe with them. And we was interacting. You always had people coming here. Black people was coming from different places. So-called, I'm using the word black just so you know what I'm saying. Coming from different parts. You had people that came from Europe who were speaking English. That's one of the ways we learn how to speak English here. So we start growing up, you know, learning how to speak English because we had Caucasians around us. We had black people who came from England who were speaking English. So we learned the language that way. And over time, as they started taking the lands and, you know, next thing you know, they got on their violent shit when they, you know, got a bunch of weapons and they felt like they was empowered. Then they start stepping to us and taking our land. And his fights ensued and things happened. And some of the prisoners of war became slaves. Okay? That's what really happened. That's the real history. When they talk about the Indian wars, that's really talking about so-called black people. A lot of the faces in those pictures, they change. Like I said, you see they real dark or they just straight change the pictures. You see? That's what really, because the Indian uprisings and the so-called slave uprisings is the same thing. It's the same thing. Same people, so-called black people fighting for their freedom. Freeing themselves from plantations. Really fighting. And the funny thing is, remember I brought it up, I said, where the so-called, where's the Native American music? The food, because y'all say y'all never was slaves. So that means your culture and your heritage was supposed to spread all over the place. They did us way dirtier than they did you so-called Native Americans. Yeah, they did us real dirty. They did so-called black people, aka the savage Indians. They did us way dirtier than they did y'all. All they did was just run y'all from one part of the country to another part. That's all. They didn't enslave you. I mean, they killed some of y'all. They killed a lot of y'all. Y'all killed a lot of them, and whatever the case may be. But y'all got reservations now. You got casinos. You got reparations. You had slaves. You were allowed to own the black people, aka the savage African. You was allowed to own savage Indian, or indigenous people. You were allowed to own them. And like I said, you were given compensation when you had to free them. So y'all got y'all the so-called Native Americans, aka the fake Indians. They got their reparations. They still getting reparations. You know, this country still gives them money. And they got casinos and everything else. And most of the people that's living on those reservations are white. They got to be $5 Indians through the Doors Act. Why you so-called Mongoloid Indians, you so-called Native Americans, why you not complaining about the white people that came on your land and tied into y'all and calling themselves Native Americans, who are the heads of your goddamn tribes? Why you not complaining about that? Why you ain't kicking them off the reservation? Why'd you kick all the so-called black Indians off the reservation, but you let the white ones stay? Make that make sense to me. Y'all should be the ones that was really supposed to be against the so-called white man. But y'all ain't. Let me see. Is the human race the highest species on highest species of being on the planet, on Earth? Is the human race the highest species of beings on the planet Earth? No. You actually have 3 types of species on Earth. You have the almond race, the human race, and you have the subhuman race. But so I don't get a YouTube strike, because I know this is going to be considered hate speech, and I'm not going to be mean. So this is not considered hate speech. I'm going to just put the humans, the Caucasians, the Asians, the East Indians in the category of the humans, right along with you so-called tribal Africans. The tribal Africans are human, and you know, technically, your Caucasians, Asians, all these people, they would be considered subhuman, only because they have the animal genetic in them, the rhesus monkey. That's why they would be considered subhuman. And again, no disrespect. This is what your own scientists say, because they did say the only full-on human being, and they use this term full-on human being, is the Africans. Now, we're not African. We so-called bronze copper-colored people are a whole other species. I know this is going to sound crazy, but it's okay. It's okay. I'll take it. I said that we are a totally different species. We're not human. I said your human race is your Caucasians, your Asians, your East Indians, and your tribal Africans. They can go on the thing as human only because they, again, it's a long account. Let's just say they were evolved onto the planet, the so-called tribal Africans. And all life comes from them. So you are correct when you say all life as far as your human race starts in Africa. But there's a higher race of beings known as Amen that were here before your humans. There was an Amen race, and there's still the descendants of the Amen race that are here. Okay? There's an Amen race here. And your people who are of the Mesoamerican culture are part of that Amen race. Your so-called black people here in the Americas and in South America, Central America, and all over, who are of the Americas, of the islands, they're of the Amen race. They're not of the human race. We're a totally different species. This is why we got hair that grows up. Y'all hair all grows down. Okay, that's human. Those are human traits. Or your hair don't grow at all like a lot of you tribal Africans. Okay? Our hair grows up in the air. We have that woolly texture. We have carbon-coated skin. Y'all have pale skin. You have flank skin. You have a melanated skin. We have carbon-based skin. Y'all have animal fur. You call it hair, but it's really fur that grows down. We have woolly hair that grows up. We are a totally different species from you. This is why there's a such thing as racism, because we're a totally different race. Race basically is species, not nationality, not color. Race is really species. Even when I was using the term race as black race, white race, I was really saying species. Species is race. You know, like you got the animal species, you got the insects, you got the reptiles, which is really not animal. You got your reptile, you got your human species, you got your plant life, you got that. We are totally different species. Look at us. Put so-called black people next to white, Asian, East Indian, Arab, all the people with the straight hair. You know, we out of place. We stand out. We stand out. So because obviously you can clearly see that we are totally different species from everybody else. We're different. We're not part of the human race. We are the almond race. The almond race was here before the human race, and the almond race created the human race, which I'm going to do the next High and Mighty talks on that, how the almond race came about. Because I don't really like to go too deep into certain explanations, but I'm going to go deep into this, how the almond race begat the human race, or created the human race, right? When they used animal genetics to create the human race. I kind of touched on a lot in my stuff, but I got to be careful because, you know, YouTube, they love the flag and they got a problem with the truth, but they got no problem with women twerking their ass, or guys talking about niggas could be gay too and making videos like that. You know, they didn't care if they offended black people when they came with this clown made this video called Niggas Could Be Gay Too. They didn't care about offending black people by using the N-word, but okay. All right, huh? I'm about to end right now. I got one more thing, one more point that I've been going on. I've been feeling it. My wife said I should end. But my wife called me and told me, got my baby in my hands, but we should end it. Because, yeah, I got to get ready for the next half. But last question. The real reason why black people are hated in America, because we indigenous. That's the real reason why we are considered black in America. We are hated because we are indigenous to America. If we really did come from Africa, we wouldn't be getting all this smoke. You do know that. If we were African, if we were really African, Umar, Dr. Smalls, and all these other guys who claim this African heritage when y'all just really boule, if we were really African, we wouldn't be getting all this smoke, because you don't see the Africans getting no problems in America. They might get some smoke in their own country because they native to their country or they are indigenous to their country. But here in the Americas, Africans don't get no smoke. Why? Because Africans are considered immigrants. See, immigrants don't have no problems here in America. It's only the indigenous people that have the problem. You see, the white man don't care about the, he don't care about the immigrants, because he's an immigrant. Caucasians are immigrants in America. They're not really Americans. They immigrants. But they get to erase their European ancestry. They get to erase the fact they can't, just like the so-called Native Americans, they try to erase their Asian heritage where they crossed the Bering Strait. Everybody want to forget where they came from, but notice so-called black people who's supposed to be African, we don't get to forget that. We got to be called African American. Why did everybody else get to forget they so-called their past, but we got to constantly relive our past being called African American? Why can't we just be called American? Answer: because we're not African, number one, and they want to constantly push it into our mind as a form of programming that you guys came over here from Africa on, like the story we made up. We want you guys to stick to the script. You guys came from Africa. We bought you in chains, millions of you from Africa to pick cotton. That's the story we want you niggas to go with. You know, go with our lie. And to reinforce our lie every day, we're just going to call you African Americans. We're going to act like you came from someplace else. We're going to act like you're immigrants like us. But yet, y'all don't get no immigrant status. You don't get no immigrant money. You don't get no immigrant status. The police still kicking your ass. That's what you do to indigenous people, because the immigrants hate the indigenous people. I told you that the black and white thing is just another way of saying the indigenous people against the immigrants. That's it. The immigrants hate the indigenous people because they want to be the indigenous people. The white people feel like they can't be American as long as we walking around here, because every time they see us, they constantly being reminded that the real Americans are still here. No matter how much you try to hide us under blackness, hide us under African Americanism, hide us under Negroism, or whatever you're going to call us in this next phase, you can't get rid of the American Indians. The American indigenous people are still here. And yes, we are native to America. We did not come from Africa. We're not black people. We are those copper-colored races of people who are spoken about in the 1828 Merriam-Webster Dictionary of the True Americans. Look it up. And that's it. Thank you for listening. Subscribe to High and Mighty Talks. Subscribe to High and Mighty Talks with me, Newton Minkari. Subscribe to the Ethnic American channel with Sister Enron Vanzetta. She always got something next coming up. So subscribe to her. Subscribe to Dane Calloway. Subscribe to my man Kareemio. Subscribe to all these people. Kareemio, Dane Calloway, all the people that are pushing the truth out here, man. 1,000 go-aheads, you need to come back. A.R.C, you need to come back as well, man. Thank you for the history. Them brothers, everybody I mentioned are thorough. And pretty much that's it. I'm going to close out in the name of Amen, by the power of Amen. Amen we trust. And Amen we thank. And Amen we continue forward forever. I'm out. Peace.